All right, so the Flexboss18, let's go ahead and start some PV going to this thing and see how it does and see if it's going to make any noise. So basically, I already checked the voltages over here, make sure they're good. They're both positive. They're both within the range. It says the voltage range is going to be between 100 and 600 volts. Of course, if you're close to that 100 and it's bouncing in and out there, you know, it's probably actually just a little bit higher than that. So I try to be higher than that if you can. And your full power MPPT range is going to be 250 to 440. I guess if you're going to want to get that maximum output, it's not going to work below that 250 volts. You know, probably because of the amperage, you know, that you're going to want to max it out. It's going to have to be at least a certain amount with the voltage. And your maximum utilized solar is going to be 18 kilowatts. And the recommended is actually going to be 21 kilowatts because they're going to want you to overpan it a little bit. So you're always going to pull in that maximum amount of power, you know, when possible. So I've already checked everything. Let's go ahead and go over to the screen recording and see what we got going on with that. And then I'll flip the switch over here. So bam, over here on the screen recording it's 10:56 a.m. And so right now, got 143 watts coming out of the inverter, you know, no solar input at all. All right, let's go ahead and flip this breaker and then go back to the screen recording and see what we got. Just went to on. Well, let's see what we get. Let me go ahead and refresh this page here. And let's see if the inverter starts making any noise. Probably don't have enough of solar coming in to make that thing ramp up, I doubt, at least at this time. Maybe another hour it may. So right now we got 396 volts, as you can see, on PV1 and 2690 watts. And on PV2 we got 274 volts and 1388 watts. So it's charging the battery right now at 3926 watts. And basically this inverter, it hasn't made a sound. I mean, not an ounce of noise. It's just like it's off. You know, so basically no noise, got 4,000 watts coming in and nothing. So if you want something that's pretty quiet and you're not going to be using this thing to its maximum capability, you know, it's going to be very, very quiet. You know, if you have a little bit of output and a little bit of solar coming in, hey, this thing, you can put it inside, you're not even going to know it's there. Even when I had this thing running last night and I had it maxed out, it's still very quiet compared to a lot of inverters. It does make just a little bit of sound, but basically, you know, it's not going to bother most people. You know, it's way less than like a washer and dryer or a dishwasher, that's for sure. So what we want to do, since we got more than 3,000 watts coming in, we're going to try to do some load testing today while we got the PV. So what I'm going to do is get some loads prepped, and then we'll come back and we'll start the loads and see if we can get up that 13,000 watts and see if it'll run 13,000 watts continuous, and then see if we can actually get it over 13,000 watts and see what the kind of the surge capacity is going to be and how long it'll do. Maybe it'll do 14,000. I guess I'm doing that and my software thinks I'm doing a thumbs up. So bottom line is we'll see if we can go to 13,000 watts or higher and see if this thing will run continuous for like 10 minutes like it does with the battery only, which is 10 kilowatts of continuous output. And I ran it at 11,700 watts for 10 minutes before the thing kicked out on its own. And as I'm going out there to plug it in, what I'll do is I'll just show you the screen over here recording, and it'll kind of show you what we got going on. I'll go ahead and hit refresh. So get it loading. And let's make sure where we're starting at to make sure it's not changed. It's 484 watts coming out right now. So I guess the air conditioner did kick up just a little bit. So let's go ahead and start the car. All right, boom, got it plugged in. Let's go over to the screen recording. Refresh it one more time to see if it's already going. And as you can see right there, we got 7,065 watts coming out. So 7,065 watts. And basically what it's doing is just bringing in enough solar to run the loads. And I think PV2 may have went to the shade a little bit or something. Something weird is going on with that because it's pulling a lot less. And we got 3,161 coming out of the battery. So hopefully the solar will go ahead and kick up here all the way. I mean, it's enough to still get to 13,000 watts because it can make up to 3,000. But I thought we had a lot more than that coming in. Okay, there it goes. Now it just adjusted up and updated again. Got 4,338 coming in on PV1, 1,579 coming in on PV2, only 1,495 coming out of the battery. So that's 7,070 watts. Let's go ahead and go over here and kick on my little heater, the little shop 5,000 watt heater or whatever it is, and see if we can kick this up some more. And then I got a little space heater here on the ground. We'll kick that on and see what we get to. bam, just started the 5,000 watt heater. Now I'll give it a second to start going, and then I'll hit refresh over on the screen. Let's go ahead and hit it refresh. $11,921 watts coming out. So remember last night, after 10 minutes, this kicked out. But the first thing I want to do is try to do it at 13,000. Let's see if we can go ahead and kick the space heater on and see what we get. All right, let's kick the space heater on high, and I'll give it a minute to get going, and then I will hit refresh again. And the time right now is 1:05. I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh and see what kind of power we got coming out. And of course, these little space heaters, sometimes it takes them a minute to kick all the way up. Right now, we got 12,433 watts coming out at 1:05 p.m. 1:05 p.m. So I'll give it about another 30 seconds, then I'll hit refresh again just to make sure nothing's changed and see if we went over 13,000 watts. I want to get as close as we can to 13,000 without going over it to see if it'll run more than 10 minutes. If it'll run more than 10 minutes, it's probably going to run indefinitely as long as you have PV coming in, like the manual says. All right, 1:06. Let's go ahead and hit refresh to make sure nothing's changed and we're still pulling out the same thing. Actually pulling out more than 13,000 watts. 13,173, and everything just kicked out. Oh, yep, got a warning light at 13,173 watts. And we had plenty of PV coming in, but I guess because we went over 13,000, let's see if we can adjust this down and get below that 13,000 and get it to run. I mean, I would figure 13,000 watts continuous with PV, it will go right above that a little bit. It wasn't that high above it. At least by this, it was saying 13,173. Maybe it was actually a little higher than that, you know, and it went out. Let's see how long this thing takes to reset again. Right now, it's 1:07. So we'll give it a couple minutes, and hopefully it resets on its own without taking forever. Maybe it'll take about 30 seconds. Actually, I can just refresh here on the page, and it'll tell us how long it's going to take. All right, let's see what we got. To notice, we got 40-some seconds for it to reset, so this one must have been a minute or two for the reset. So we'll go ahead and give it that other 30 seconds. It should reset. As you see, the PV is still going into the battery as of this moment. And we'll try to put the space heater on low this time to see if we can get it right below that 13,000, to see if we can get it to run for 11 minutes. If it'll run for 11 minutes, then it's probably going to run continuous right below that 13,000 watts like it's supposed to. But man, 13,100 is not that high above it. I wish it would have kept running. All right, everything just reset. As you see, the time just got done, and I just heard the inverter kicking back on. It's back in normal. My car's probably starting to charge and ramp up again. As you see, everything's back to normal. And once we go refresh again, I'm sure the car is charging. What I'm going to do is turn my mini split down, see if it pulls a little less power. So we're pulling 6,647 watts. I'm going to turn the mini split down. Maybe I get it that 100 and some watts less that we're going to need. All right, I turned my mini split down to low, and hopefully I get it to go down about 200 watts, and maybe that'll keep us right below 13,000 so we can try to run it for a little more than 10 minutes. We'll go ahead and hit refresh again. This testing, of course, it takes a little time because you got to kind of find the exact amount you want to come out for the test. And unless you have like a load bank you can actually put on these inverters, which I don't because it's very, very, very expensive. I think EG4 or Sirius Solar, one of those guys have them. I think EG4 has a big load bank, and they can just tie that into their inverters and pull exactly out what power they want to pull. Hey, I'm just running equipment here, a heater, space heater, EV charger. So let's go ahead and hit refresh again. It's 110, so it should kind of be lined out where it wants to be. All right, we're still saying 6,656 watts. It don't like it moved a lot yet. Maybe we'll come down some more. I'm going to go ahead and start this heater back and then start the space heater and see what we get. I am going to put the space heater on low this time, though. All right, I turned the space heater on and the big heater, the shop heater, and we'll see what we get. I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh a couple times. It's 1:10 p.m. right now, and it may be a little loud, of course, because of the fan over there. Says right now we're pulling out 11,914 watts. And of course, that little space heater on the ground takes a minute sometimes to ramp up. So let's go ahead and hit refresh again just to see what we got. I just don't want it to be at 13,000 and I don't know it, because I want to kind of set the time what we got. All right, right now it says we're pulling out 11,881 watts. So maybe the mini split kicked down. I'm going to kick this heater up to high. All right, I kicked it up to high. Hopefully it don't go over 13,000 watts. And we'll try to give it a second and then hit refresh again. It's 111. 12,157 watts right now. We're definitely over the point last night where it faulted out last night for a surge after like 30 seconds or a minute when we were over 12,000 watts. So we'll see now with the PV, it should run continuously up to 13,000 watts. So if it does, we're going to know, because right now it's 112. Basically, if we go to 123, basically over 10 minutes, I think it's going to be fine and keep running as long as you have PV under that 13,000 watts. And we'll keep hitting refresh to see if maybe we're pulling a little more power here in a second. And if not, I can turn the mini split back on to high to try to kick it back up some, or at least maybe medium. Oh, 12,869 watts. So I didn't have to do anything. Just that heater made it go up and it kicked out again. It wasn't even at 13,000 watts. 12,869 is what the monitoring app is showing online. Let me refresh it again to see if it changes. Maybe it actually went over that for a minute and we just missed it because we don't have a screen. So we got a 2-minute recovery time. And so we're going to wait on that and then it'll restart on its own. But I'm not at 13,000 watts. I'm going to have to go look up the manual. I thought it was supposed to run 13,000 watts continuous as long as you had solar coming in, which I do. I have 5,000 or some watts of solar coming in. So you would think it will make up that 3,000 difference between the 10 and the 13. So let's go ahead on the EG4 website. Let me pull it up real quick. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the manual and just verify I'm right about this 13,000 watt thing. It says continuous output with PV 13 kilowatts, 54 amps at 240 volts. It says delivers 13 kilowatts to grid or load with PV. Doesn't seem like it's doing that to me. Maybe what it is it's using just the, I don't know, but you would think it would be able to kick out 13,000 watts of output. So it'd be a little rated just a little bit more than that. Let's see here. Spec sheet. Let's just click on it just to make sure there's nothing different in the actual specs. AC output and input at 13 kilowatts at 54 amps at 240 volts. So, you know, I would think that's what I'm pulling. Maybe what it is I'm running this heater on the one leg, and it's taking the one leg over the 6,500 kilowatts that we were talking about. And maybe that is the problem, because the max continuous per line, as you can see right here, is 6.5 kilowatts. I'm going to go ahead and turn everything off. Because what I'm running, I've got a 240 volt, about 5,000 watt shop heater up here on the wall. Then I have a 6,600 watt at 240 volts for the EV charger. So both of those are going to be pretty even on the legs. But then this space heater is going to be coming off of one leg, of course, because it's 120 volts. So, you know, with both of those, that's about 6,000. And in that one, it's going to put it over the 6,500. So I just don't know if I have the right loads to keep it right below the 13,000 with it kind of being balanced out. So let me see here. Let me think for a minute to see if I can figure out how to get this load to be balanced. I don't know if there's going to be a way. Let me go back on here on the device. All right, let me refresh this. All right, let's see what each leg's pulling out, L1 and L2 right now. I don't remember what L1 and L2 said when it was at the 12,800 something, but I got to pay more attention to that, because maybe that's why it's turning off. It's not the actual 13,000 watts. It's actually the leg being over the 6.5 kilowatts that it's rated for. So I guess you have to have the loads basically perfectly balanced to get that 13,000 that they're talking about with the PV. But as you saw, I was up to 12,100 and something, and it seemed like it ran for a while. So maybe that's what I need to do, is just try to run that without the space heater and see how long it runs. Maybe I can have the mini split going and still be over 12,000 watts and run for more than a minute, which it didn't really do last night on battery power. So if it does that, we'll see if that will run 11 minutes and try it. What do you guys think about that? I say we go ahead and give it a try. We refresh this one more time just to make sure everything is balanced still. As you can see, at 117 on here, got 3,323 watts coming out of L1 and 3,317 watts coming out of L2. So basically very, very even loads. I'm just going to turn the space heater on just so we can see what the load imbalance is while I'm running this, you know, without it being up high, and it should still run for a while, and we'll be able to see what it's actually pulling, the difference with L1 and L2, what the difference is making. All right, I got the little space heater on, the 120 volt one, and we'll see what it pulls and what kind of leg imbalance it causes between the L1 and L2. And if it's like 1,500 watts, I mean, it's definitely going to make it go over that 6,500. If I'm already pulling 6,000 out of it, it's going to take it up to 7,500, and that's why it interlocks after like 30 seconds or a minute or whatever it is. It's not very long at all. So let's go ahead and refresh this. We might have to refresh it a couple times because it takes the space heater a minute to ramp all the way up. It just don't start all the way sometimes. As you can see, we got a leg imbalance already. L1 is at 4,575 watts, and L2 is at 3,321 watts. So it's about, what, 1,200-ish watts, maybe a little more. So about 1,200 watt difference. Maybe 1,250. So a little over a 1,200 watt imbalance. So of course, if you're already at 6,000, it's going to take you up to 7,200 if you're running a space heater. So that's probably what's kicking out. So let's leave the space heater off. We'll turn the mini split on, turn on the big heater over here, see if we can get over 12,000, and see if we can get over that 10-minute mark. Space heater off at 118. We went on ahead and update this thing again. These tests are pretty interesting. You kind of learn what your system will do when you first get it. And you kind of learn, hey, if it's over 6,500 watts, that is right. It will, if it's imbalanced, you know, it ain't going to make it to that 13,000. It's basically got to be completely even to get to that, it seems like. You would think it would be a 7,000 kilowatt on that. So, you know, it can have a little bit of an imbalance. You know, one could be 6 and one could be 7. And you still get to that 13,000 mark and be good to go. But I guess they didn't design it like that because it's really a 10 kilowatt inverter, and they let it go up to 13,000 as a little extra when you got PV coming in, because it's, you know, of course, 10,000 off a battery, off of anything. So that's really the rating. All right, as you can see, we got 7,080 watts coming out here at 120. Let's go ahead and kick on the big shop 5,000 watt heater. Try to get this thing up close to 12,000 watts. And hopefully once we do get a little above 12,000 watts, it'll be below that 6,500 per leg load limit, and we'll be able to run this thing for more than 10 minutes. So as soon as it seems like the heater's kicked on for a few seconds, I'll go ahead and refresh it, and we'll see what the leg imbalance is. Yeah, the mini split I got is a 240, so everything should be pretty balanced. So at 120 here, we went on ahead and refreshed, and let's see what we got. Got 11,876 watts right now. So we got 5,945 watts coming out of one leg and 5,931 coming out of the other one. Let's see. Let's refresh it one more time just to make sure it didn't actually go up any higher than that before I try anything else. Still about the same, 11,871 watts at 121. I'm going to try this space heater again. I don't know what else to do. I want to get it right over 12,000 watts, but still be below the 6,500 for each one of the legs, L1 and L2. It's kind of hard to get it there with a 120 volt load that pulls a little more than you want, but I'm going to try it. All right, I kicked it on to low. And we'll give it a few seconds and then update this thing. I'll go ahead and just load it, update it right now, just to make sure nothing else changed. 12,365 watts. pulling 6,440 watts out of L1 and 5,927 out of L2. So we're on the verge of that 6,500 limit, that 6.5 kilowatt limit. So right now, if it stays like this, you know, it could change a little bit. If it stays like that, it shouldn't interlock it or fault it out. I say interlock, I'm talking like I'm at work or something with interlocks, but you know, it shouldn't fault it out. So we'll see. Right now we got 6,402 watts on L1 and 5,931 watts out of L2. That's a total of 12,331 watts coming out of the inverter, but we had plenty of PV coming in, and right now it's running fine. It's at 122. So basically, if we make it to 133 like this, that means it can run that 13,000 watts if it's even and less than the 6,500 on each leg, probably with no problem. You know, you probably don't want to be running the inverter that hard all the time anyway, but just so we know we can do it, that's what this testing is all about, to see what the limits actually are and if they're correct with the specs, because they don't need to be pushing these specs out if it's not actually right. And it seems to be correct so far. You know, 6,402 watts is still running. It's 123. So I'm pretty sure before, after about 30 seconds to a minute, it kicked out. So if it doesn't do it and it's running more than a minute, that 6,500 watt limit per leg was definitely the problem. All right, let's go back over to the screen. Let's refresh it again just to make sure here at 123 that nothing has changed. I want to make sure it's not going over that 6,500 so I know. Right now it's at 6,349 watts on L1, so we're still below that 6,500 mark, and it's 124. So it definitely seems like we've ran for a minute, and it's still running. So it definitely ran longer today at 12,000, over 12,000 watts than it did last night just off of batteries. So this whole PV coming in and being able to do 13,000 watts continuous seems to be definitely possible and seems to be accurate, as long as you stay below that 6,500 mark. I know I keep saying that, but I also want to make that clear to people so they understand your loads are going to have to be perfectly balanced to get to this 13,000 watt mark. That's what it seems like. Maybe they should have said 12,000 watts continuous, and then the 6,500 a leg, and then to me that would be a little more accurate, because you'd have a little wiggle room with the L1 and L2 imbalance. You basically have no wiggle room at 6,500. They both have to be 6,500 to get you to 13,000. So it would be nice if the leg imbalance could be 7,000. So it'd be a little easier to get to that 13,000 at the same continuous. To me, it's not 13,000 continuous unless you have perfect balanced loads. Who has perfect balanced loads on a home or a cabin or whatever they're trying to run? So I don't know about that spec. I do not really like that, you know, myself. Maybe there's a firmware update they can do to get the leg imbalance to be a little different, or they should just say, hey, it's 12,500 watts continuous. It'll be a little easier to make it to that and have a slight imbalance between your legs. Maybe I'm being a little hard on them, but you know, when you say, hey, if you got 3,000 watts of PV coming in, I should be able to get to 13,000 watts continuous. I should be able to get to 13,000 watts continuous with a slight imbalance. All right, let's go ahead and refresh it again. It's 126, but I've just been sitting here talking. It's starting to get hot in here with these heaters. All right, at 126 here, we got 6,351 watts on L1, 5,949 on leg 2, on L2. So that definitely seemed to have worked. And we'll try to go to 133. I'll come back here at 133 if it's still running. If it stops before then, I'll let you know. All right. It is 127 and it kicked out. So let's go ahead and see what it kicked out for. I'm gonna have to refresh this and then it'll tell us. So I'm not sure what it was, because it was still should have been below. The L1 and L2 looked like it was fine. So to notice, EPS overload. So let's see if we can look at the notifications. It's not on here. Where's the notification at? Let's see here. I wish it told exactly which overload type it was. Like, you know, if it was the leg imbalance. I mean, we weren't nowhere near 13,000 watts. I was below the 6,500. And, you know, what was it, about 5 minutes? So I mean, continuous is continuous. It's not 5 minutes. So to me, that seems like a problem. I mean, what do you guys think? I was below the 6,500 per leg. I was below 13,000. I had plenty of solar coming in, you know, well more than that 3,000 that you need to make up. So, I mean, maybe it needs a firmware update. Maybe, you know, I'm doing something wrong, but I don't think so. I mean, I'm just running the thing. And now it's got like a 5-minute recovery time for this overload. You know, I don't know. I don't like it. It says 13,000 watts continuous. Here, we'll pull it up and I'll show you. I mean, you saw it probably earlier. Right here, it says max continuous discharge with PV. And it says and grid. So I don't know if it's saying I have to have grid. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it needs to have grid. But I thought it was just PV or grid. See, this says battery. Let's see here. See, I don't think that's what the other thing said. See, this right here says can deliver 10 kilowatts of continuous power from the battery or 13 kilowatts with solar PV assistance. It says when grid connected. I don't get it. Why is it got to be grid connected if you got the solar coming in? So maybe that is why, is because I don't have grid power on this thing. So that'll probably be a test we have to do whenever I get this hooked up to my whole house and I have grid power from the Gridboss, I guess with the inverter. I just don't know. Why do you got to have the grid power if you got solar coming in? I don't know. Maybe it's saying that regardless, it's going to be using a little bit of grid to get that 13 kilowatts of continuous output. But to me, that don't make sense. I got battery and PV that should make up that. If I got the 10 kilowatts to come out of the battery and then, you know, plenty coming from the sun, like 6,000 or 7,000 watts or whatever it is. But it could just be my fault. I could just be looking at the specs wrong. But it looks like, you know, it does kind of make it clear that it says with solar PV assistance when grid connected. So I missed that whole part about the when grid connected. So it was a good test to do. So you can run about 5 minutes when you have solar over the 12,000 watt mark. But after 5 minutes, it's going to turn off unless you have grid connected to your inverter. And maybe you can do a firmware update and get that fixed. If I got 7,000 watts of solar coming in, come on, shouldn't that make up for it? So I'm not sure how the inner workings with all that go, but I'll have this inverter, of course, linked up down in the description if you're interested in one of these. It seems to be like a great inverter so far. I just kind of misread some of the specs there, but I wish it would still run on the 13 kilowatts with just PV and the battery, but grid power, at some point I will get it. And remember, if you guys want to help out the channel, whenever you use my links, you're going to get $50 off any order over $50 from Signature Solar. And if there's any additional discount codes that they're able to offer for this Flexboss18, which I think they're going to be able to do that soon, you know, it'll probably be a time limit on it, but I'll put that below whenever it is available if we're able to work that out. And I want everybody to know that every Thursday we do an unplugged live stream with myself, of course, Eric from East Texas Homestead, and Adam from Adam Delay on YouTube. Those guys can answer a lot of your questions. They do a lot of solar stuff. So if you have questions, you come into the chat and talk to us. And we have special guests on that also have a lot of knowledge in the solar realm, the DIY solar realm. So if you're interested in that, hey, subscribe to my channel and those guys. I'll leave the playlist below so you can go check out all the past live streams so you can get an idea of what it's all about. But you can come in there live, ask a question, and we definitely try to answer them. So if you're interested in that, hey, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell notification so you get notified every time we do a live stream. And thanks for watching.